Struggling with a dog who just won't listen, and no matter what you do, things aren't getting any better, or maybe they're even getting worse? You might be making some surprisingly common mistakes that actually encourage your pet's bad behavior. Today I'm talking with Bradley Phifer, a professional dog trainer and a behavior consultant, and we're here to help you see where things go wrong and to show you how to fix them. You've reached the Pet Parent Hotline, your lifeline to practical solutions for your toughest pet parenting challenges. I'm your host, Amy Castro, and I'm here to help you cut through the noise and turn expert advice into step-by-step strategies so you can stop chasing your tail and start enjoying life with pets again. I've seen this firsthand both in my own rescue work and in conversations with so many pet parents who feel completely stuck. It's not that they don't care, it's just that no one ever taught them how to avoid some of these traps that we fall into as pet parents when we're trying to train our pets. That's why I wanted to bring Bradley Phifer on the show today. Bradley is a professional dog trainer and a behavior consultant with 17 years of experience helping pet parents improve their relationships with their dogs. He's certified by the Certification Council for Professional Dog Trainers, where he also served as their executive director. Bradley, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to the opportunity.
I appreciate it because I know that as somebody in the dog training world and in dog showing too, right?
Yes, I am. I've been showing dogs since I was 21.
Wow. So you probably see a wide range of behavior from not only on the part of the pets, but the actions of pet parents. And I know for me, sometimes I see things that, and I'm not a dog trainer by any stretch of the imagination, but I see some things that make me cringe. And it's like, why are you doing that? You're making it worse. And that's why I wanted to talk to you about this today, because I think there's a lot of things that pet parents think they're doing right, and they're actually encouraging the bad behavior. So I think part of it, too, starts off with picking the dog. And I don't want to get too deep into how to pick the right dog for you, but
Sure.
How often do you see in your training work that as much of the pet parent's behavior is the issue, it's you ain't got no business having that kind of dog? Or is it just me that sees that?
No, I would agree with you. I see it a lot. I think people, we fall in love with dogs based on their stories. A lot of people are adopting dogs from rescue groups, and so we fall in love with their stories and we want to help them. Mm-hmm. Or we get a breed that we had when we were kids and we're reminiscent of our childhood dog and how great it was, but we forget that mom and dad did all of the stuff, right? And took care of all the dog and fed it and walked it and those sort of things. So every great dog owner relationship starts with finding the right individual for you, your lifestyle, and your needs. It always goes awry when we pick a dog for looks or because they don't shed. We don't want a shedding dog. We something kind of more superficial. We've really got to focus on temperament and individual personality. Mm-hmm. Probably the same thing with our human relationships, right? Like every boyfriend I've ever picked based on looks has not really worked out.
Yeah.
So you got to find the guy who really gets you and you get him and that you can be friends with. So it's all about temperament and personality.
That's such a good point. And we are so swayed, and in addition to the things that you mentioned too, I think people will see something in a movie and they decide, like I remember, and I don't even remember the name of the movie, but it was a movie with Channing Tatum, and it was like a military working dog. Of course, it was a Malinois. Mm-hmm. And I thought, good God, please don't let everybody go out and start getting a Mal, because that's like not the dog for 90% of the people in the world.
Maybe 99% of the people in the world.
Maybe so, yeah.
And you see too, every time we have a movie come out and there's dogs pictured or featured in the movie, the parent clubs for that individual breed always come out with a statement encouraging people to do their research before they purchase one of those breeds, or to visit breeders or talk to breeders, give them a list of ethical breeders, and really try to not maybe sway them on that breed, but educate them on the realities of what it's like to live with a Malinois or a Great Dane or a Golden Retriever or a Dalmatian, which is really responsible and thankful that they're there to do that for us.
Yeah. And I think rescues can do a better job. We want to adopt out pets, but we also don't want them ending up in a shelter. Or I know for me, because we have a lifetime return, I don't want it back a year from now or 6 months from now. Right. So I'm going to tell you everything I know about it up front, and, sometimes try to convince you that it's not a good fit for you. And sometimes people get pissed.
I think from the pet owner side, we don't know what we don't know. And isn't that the rule for life? Like, I don't know what I don't know. and that's not going to happen to me, right? I can exercise it, I can train it, I can, and then 3 months down the road, the novelties wore off a little bit, and you've got the adolescent, you name it, Malinois, Great Dane, Lab Mix, right? And you're like, oh my gosh, they were right. And so it is, I think, important responsibility for both breeders and rescue groups to really know their individual dogs, like what are their strengths, what are their stressors, what type of home is going to be most fulfilling for them, and then to do a good job, pairing them with the right home. And it's much harder, I think, for rescue groups sometimes because they have an influx of dogs. There's always someone waiting. There's limited resources. Some dogs, just based on age or breed type, are less adoptable than others. And so sometimes it's like, wow, somebody's actually interested in this dog we've had for 3 months, but it's your responsibility or our responsibility, because I breed as well, to make sure that we're protecting not only the animals that we're responsible for, but also protecting the community from heartbreak, sadness, and everything else that comes along with mixed match relationship.
Yeah, definitely. And safety. I think I feel a very strong sense of public safety in all instances where the animal's behavior is an issue. It's like you might think you can control that, but what if it gets out of your yard, or what if this happens or that happens, or whatever the case may be. But anyway, let's go ahead and just run with the assumption that we have the dog now, whether we've made a good choice or not, and hopefully people are doing their homework and asking good questions. Let's kind of start with some of the behaviors that you think are A, common, and B, things that people kind of just have the wrong idea, maybe instinctively, or they got the bad advice on Facebook groups, that they're doing the wrong things and making that behavior worse.
I think it's important to maybe even take one step back and say that most people's common complaints about their dog are they're jumping up on me and my guest. They're not coming back when we ask them, when we call them, pulling on leash. I would say maybe digging, depending on the dog, right? Digging. But really, I think it comes down to the thing that has to happen if you want to be a successful dog owner is you've got to be disciplined and you've got to be proactive. And what we oftentimes do, especially with puppies, we know now that when you get a puppy, you've got to go to the vet, you've got to do your puppy class, you've got to do your training. And I think most people are really investing on the front end into their training. But you do that and you get your puppy at 10 weeks old and you do your training. By the time they're 16 weeks old, you probably completed your puppy class. And most people, I think, in their head go, oh, she's trained, she's doing great. And then during adolescence, they kind of slack off a little bit. Yeah, they kind of slack off a little bit and life gets in the way. And if you're a family, you've got a lot of cooks in the kitchen responsible for maintaining and caring for the dog. And so it's easy to decrease your discipline and your proactive training during adolescence because, they're not chewing on stuff anymore. They're crate trained. They're not peeing in the house anymore. Like, they understand the basics, but that's probably the worst time to let up because they need it during that adolescent stage. They need to be out and about more to make sure that they're learning that the world is a safe place. And the dogs need to have some daily practice lessons, even if it's just 5 minutes a day where we run through calisthenics of come, sit, down, stay. It's important to maintain those skills. And they also need the maintenance of expectations. Things like sit, stay at doorways versus barreling past me. Things like sitting for attention or becoming less excited when I come in the house before I greet you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
well, and that's such a huge, just a quick point on that one. Like people, they create, and I'm a talker. I actually talk for a living, not on this podcast. This is just volunteer, but my actual paid gig, I go out and run my mouth and I get paid for that. So I can talk.
Lucky.
And, that people just talk too darn much. And then they create the excitement. Like I come in the door, I come home. Oh, I'm so happy to see you. Yeah. And then when the dog gets wound up, now it's like, stop. It's like, well, you just turned the key in their back and you turned it all the way up and let it go. And then you expect it's going to stop. It doesn't work like that. And so it's just surprising that people don't get their role in that.
Yeah. Or maybe even they do understand their role. They're like, we know we're not supposed to, but we just love her so much, So sometimes it's a double-edged sword because we love our dogs. And some of the things that we don't mind about us, like, if you came to my house, very few people get to see the young show dogs because the motto is no is not in their vocabulary. And we want them to be full of themselves and enthusiastic and have showmanship and things like that. And they are sometimes wild during adolescence. But when they come into the house, they learn to be a little bit more inhibited, and during retirement, they're reined in. But we oftentimes, to your point, we get the dogs. We love them so much. They are a part of our family. So what we don't mind, we encourage. Like, I like that she jumps up on me and gives me kisses in my ear. It makes me feel good. I like doing that. The dog enjoys it as well. But I hate it when she does it to my mom or my sister-in-law, or I get embarrassed and I want to scold the dog, and that creates conflict. And so it's really important for us to have an idea about how do we want our dog to behave, because dog training and living with them is really all about emotional responses and behavior patterns. Owner comes in, I'm excited. My excitement is manifested through jumping up, And so owners have to really think about, what do you want life to look like when the dog is 2, 3, 4, 5? And we talk about that a lot in our puppy classes, where yes, they're cute. You love them. It seems really benign right now that they're just kind of jumping up a little bit for attention, but that behavior is going to progress day in and day out through practice, because it's important to remember that behavior that continues to occur is rewarded. You may not think you're rewarding it, but because it continues to occur, we know that it's being rewarded, right? So is it access to my owner? Is it access to get out of my crate? Is it getting a food treat so I stop barking? I mean, there's any number of reasons, but it's important to remember that concept. And so we talk all the time that there's going to come a point with your puppy or your young dog, or even your newly adopted dog, where the novelty is going to be wear off, and you're going to be like, I wish they weren't doing this. And so from the onset of that relationship, whether I got you as a puppy or I adopted you as an adolescent dog, I think it's really important to say, what do I want life to look like? When I come in the door, I want you to sit, or I want you to lie down, or I want you to go to your bed, or I want you just to be kind of neutral. And I think we probably with our dogs don't acknowledge the need or the benefit of neutrality. Like we like them to be excited to see other dogs. We want to socialize them. We want them to like people, but then we don't like when they are barking, pulling on the leash, jumping up. And so I think concepts we try to teach is just be neutral. It's not a big deal when mom and dad come in the room. It's not a big deal when the aunt and uncle come over for drinks. It's just like, be neutral, not a big deal. And if you can't be neutral, then we can train you to go to your bed and stay. We can make sure you're comfortable in a crate or a laundry room, mud room with the gate up, so that way you're not practicing the wrong behavior, the undesired behavior. So those are important pieces.
Yeah. And I think that's something that people need to kind of think about, like, before you even get the dog, because you mentioned, what do you want it to seem like in 2 years, or when the dog's in adolescence, and modeling that behavior young. And that's such a good point, because people do this all the time when they meet one of our dogs. It's like, oh, that's fine. The jumping up. Oh, that's fine. And I tell them, no, it's not fine, because just because you like it doesn't mean the next adopter that comes along is going to like that, or that they don't have their grandma living with them and it's going to knock grandma down. So we need everybody to kind of follow those rules. But I think establishing what you want your life to be like even just something as simple as getting on the furniture, don't wait until the dog's 3 years old and now try to say you can't do it because now you're too big. I would assume it's confusing for dogs to, you've let me come on the couch for 2 years and now I'm suddenly getting kicked off because you've got a baby on the couch instead, or whatever. It's like,
New furniture.
That? Oh yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah, it was all fine and good with the old crappy sofa, but now that I have a new one, nobody's allowed to touch it.
Yeah. In life, right? Isn't that a common message? In life, it's easier to be proactive and prevent problems. So it's easier to be proactive and disciplined in creating a harmonious relationship with your dog than it is to fix problems later on. Because once the behavior's there, it's much more difficult to fully correct, depending on the breed, how reinforcing the behavior is, how frequently the behavior is practiced and reinforced. There's reinforcement histories there. So that's an important piece to remember for people. And again, you don't think about it. It doesn't matter how many times you say it as a professional. When you get that puppy, you're not even thinking about 3 years from now. You're thinking about today. And so I think, kind of talking about our main point, the message must be, being proactive and disciplined doesn't mean that you're being mean to your dog or you're punishing your dog. It just means that you're putting structure in place. Things like you're in your crate or your X pin for 30 or 40 minutes while I'm doing something else. You're kind of on a reset rest period. You come out, we'll go potty. You can play with the family for a little bit. We do a little bit of training, and then you're going to go back in your crate for a while. And that sort of cycle can go on for a while until the puppy or the adolescent dog is trained to a point where they can be more trustworthy. But being disciplined in that way, or even just something as common as having the dog sit, stay at doorways, so the dog learns we don't just rush through doorways. You have to sit and stay, give the owner some eye contact, and they'll release you if it's time to go outside. Little pieces like that, teaching the dog to inhibit themselves slightly, de-escalate and calm down, be more neutral before they get attention, be comfortable in the crate or confined space while you're home. All of those things are going to set up a really successful situation for you with your dog compared to, and I worry sometimes we talk so much about positive reinforcement and not, I think discipline can sometimes be misinterpreted or be a bad word, but I think sometimes people, especially younger dog owners, first time dog owners, there's so much information. They don't know what to do and they don't want to do the wrong thing. But I will tell you, a lack of structure, a lack of training, a lack of routine is probably the biggest predictor of behavior problems, right? That combined with, and we can go down this rabbit hole, but that combined with just exercise and fulfilling your dog in general, knowing who your dog is, what they enjoy, what they don't enjoy, knowing what they need in order to be exercised fully. If you had going back to the Belgian Malinois, if you had a Belgian Malinois, you're going to do a lot more in terms of enrichment and exercise. And I mean like running, jogging, training, obstacles than if you got a Cavalier, Yeah,
so. That's exactly the dog I was thinking about. The complete opposite. Yeah. And people think, and I did for years too, I couldn't understand. I had a Doberman Pinscher. His name was Jack. We had him for 13 years, got him as a puppy. So anything that he did was all my fault. But, I did many things along the way. And overall, he was a good dog, but I don't think his life in the end was as good as it could have been because of mistakes that I made. I took him to the puppy kindergarten class and we continued to work on the training, but we didn't work on the socialization. So turned out he ended up being around other dogs and definitely not good around small children. And then, all I can remember, or a lot of what I can remember about him being in the house is, Jack, go lay down. Jack, go lay down. Jack, go lay down. Because he wasn't getting the exercise because we were a bunch of couch potatoes. I finally got a bike with a bike attachment, and that made a huge difference. But thinking that I was going to just let him out in the backyard and that's going to be enough exercise for a Doberman and mental stimulation, that was stupid. I should have known better. But I'd always wanted one.
Again, you didn't know, and the ones that you saw or had been around were successful, maybe because of their individual temperament or because you just didn't see what was going on in the back end, with their owners. I think it's also, this is probably a great opportunity to talk a little bit about too, that, you can over socialize your dog. Socialization is something that you should do. Socialization is enjoying experiences of life. So going to the vet, having a positive experience, sitting on a park bench and being exposed to noises or dogs walking by. Socialization is leaving your comfort zone, your bubble, and being out and about in the world, experiencing the world, sights, sounds, smells, maybe meeting a couple of other dogs or a few other people. Socialization is not flooding your dog with, going to the dog park every day or having 13 kids walk up to the dog at the bus stop and pet them. You can over socialize your dog to the point where it can be counterproductive.
Yeah, no, I see.
And it happens in two ways typically. One, the dog it's not mature enough to handle the stress that you're putting him in. So it actually develops reactivity or maybe some fear-based aggressive behavior later on. Or they love it so much, and every time they're out in the world, they get to say hello to this person and those dogs that they can then become frustrated because they can't get to. They don't have access to what they want to see. So just sometimes when people say, well, I took him everywhere, we did all these things, sometimes you can over socialize your dog and it can be counterproductive, especially if your dog has some sort of bad experience. You're letting your dog be greeted by another dog on leash and the other dog snaps and growls at your puppy. You got to be conscientious of those things.
We'll be right back.
Can we be real for a second? Vet bills can be brutal. One unexpected visit, and suddenly you're choosing between paying your rent or paying for your pet's care. That's exactly why I created the Vet Bill Survival Kit. It's free, and inside you'll find 10 proven ways to save money at the vet without shortchanging your pet. Download your kit today at petparenthotline.com/vetkit. That's petparenthotline.com/vetkit. That's such a good point because you can think you're doing the right thing. And it's funny. And I have thought about this before, is that I remember taking Jack when he was a puppy to puppy kindergarten at a big box chain with a lot of puppies, and he was scared. Like he kept kind of going under my chair, going behind me, and so I wonder if I traumatized him early on. And again, I think it's good that we're going to be, just so everybody knows, to be watching for another episode we're going to do about picking a trainer, because I think that even if you do your homework, they say you should go to puppy kindergarten. But really, should you go to a big box store with 25 other puppies? Is that the best thing? It might be fine for one puppy and not good for another puppy. And how do I know that? Because it's a brand new puppy.
Right.
So,
but one thing to keep in mind, most people, like you said, you hid behind my legs. He was uncomfortable. It's important that we advocate for our dogs. And even if the professional says, oh, it's fine, he'll warm up, don't worry about it. If there's something going on where you feel uncomfortable, like you see your dog doing something that demonstrates they're uncomfortable, or something's going on that, the dog's jumping on someone and that person goes, well, I don't mind if he jumps. Well, I do mind. You're always the one in control. You can advocate for your dog, whether that's a training situation, say, no, Jack, we're going to sit, or we're going to lie down, or we're going to walk away and not jump on this person. Or you can advocate for your dog by saying, actually, would you move your dog away? Or I'm going to take my puppy out of this class and give them space because I can see that they're not comfortable. And after 3 or 4 minutes, they've not tried to even come out and sniff. And so let's take a step back, reset, and figure out how we're going to move forward in either one of those scenarios. Not doing that, whether it's because of inexperience or maybe I don't want to make someone mad, that could actually open up the door for problems later on. So most dogs, I think learn resilience. And, they have some bad experiences. They went to get their first bath. It's a little stressful, but they get their second bath, their third bath, their fourth bath. And like, oh, that's not so bad. Or they leave the house and a dog barks at them, but then they have fun at the dog store. So they learn resilience through these interactions. But if every time you leave the house, the neighbor's dogs are harassing you, or someone rushes out of their yard and grabs you on the leash and collar, right? If you have too many bad experiences, you're going to lose resilience, and then you're going to develop behavior problems because every time you leave your bubble or you're around someone who's not within your family, something unpleasant occurs. And so it's really, thinking about what are the things that we do that we don't even know we're doing that may contribute to behavior problems, not advocating for our dog, not being training focused, putting our dog in situations where they can't be successful or they're not enjoying it. I run a daycare, and all of our daycare students have been training dogs first. And some of the, sometimes as dogs grow up, they don't enjoy the company of other dogs as much, right? They'd rather be at home with their owner, or they'd rather be hanging out with 2 or 3 dogs, not a bunch of dogs, whether that's an age thing or a temperament thing. I mean, there's a number of reasons, but we oftentimes see that people are sending their dogs to dog daycare because, like in your story, Jack needed more exercise. You were busy, or you didn't feel like taking a jog that day, or whatever it was. And so it's easier to send them to dog daycare and have them wore out. But is dog daycare an enjoyable experience for them? Do they come home fulfilled, or do they come home mentally exhausted because they were beat up all day? And that's nothing against dog daycares, but the reality is a lot of dog daycares are ran by people who may or may not be super dog savvy, and they may not be trained to pick up on all of the cues or the subtleties that your dog is uncomfortable until a dog triggers a fight. And all of a sudden the dog who's being aggressive is being the problem.
And he was just the victim originally.
For weeks, months, exactly right. Days, weeks, months. And so till finally he becomes defensive. And so we don't always think about this sort of things. And then people feel bad because their dog is attacked another dog at dog daycare. But really there's been a progression. If we had really looked at it, the dog wasn't enjoying dog daycare, or he's being harassed by another dog, and it just compounds and progresses until we have a situation, an altercation. Yeah.
So trying to pull all this together, then I want to talk about some of this. Maybe it is a matter of what are the mistakes and then what are the solutions. So we talked about obviously starting early, and we didn't actually say it necessarily with these words, but being consistent. Start early with what you want your lifestyle to be. Be consistent regardless of not allowing puppies to do things and then deciding later on, because it's now big, we're not going to allow that anymore. I think, what you were talking about towards the end too is really knowing your dog's individual personality. Like just for example, the jumping. I know a common thing that people do with jumping, the instinct is to push them down, but lo and behold, they jump more when you do that. So like things like that. What are the mistakes and what can they do instead?
Well, the measure of success is is the behavior continuing to occur or is it decreasing? Because if it's continuing to occur, the behavior is being rewarded. And so as an owner, you can say, well, every time I come home, I ignore her. I have her sit. Well, who else lives with you? Is it your dog walker? Is it your husband? Is it your wife? Is it the kid? Like somewhere in her world, the behavior is being rewarded because it's continuing to occur. So let's figure that part out first.
Yeah.
And then is what I'm doing working? Well, is the behavior decreasing? If so, then it's working. Typically, the best path forward in terms of training is going to be first and foremost managing the dog. So how can I prevent my dog from rehearsing this undesired behavior while I work on a training plan? And sometimes it's long-term management. There isn't a fix where you can just say, well, we did it. The problem is resolved. We no longer need to manage it. Dogs, in my opinion, really need long-term management. What I experience is that the more we let down those management protocols, the boundaries, if you will, the more the dogs self-manage, meaning they're just free in the house when I leave, or they're just in the backyard doing their thing. We almost always see an increase in digging, barking at strangers, trying to eat the UPS man, that's those sort of things. And so
Yeah.
just
kind of like letting your teenager have too much slack to, no curfews, no rules or regulations. And they're going to do exactly that. Then they're going to push it out to those boundaries. And obviously on a dog's part, it's not like a conscious rule breaking thing, but that's such a good point.
Self-management, I think oftentimes it opens the door for behavior that we don't actually like. So first and foremost, how can we manage this behavior so it doesn't continue to occur? Because practice makes perfect. And if I'm jumping on you every time you come in the door and you can't follow the training plan because you got your bag or your kids or whatever, then the behavior is going to continue to occur.
Mm-hmm. Well, and
I
just want to hit on that for a quick point, because I think that's such a different way of looking at things, because there are people that would say, well, if I walk in the door and my dog's in a crate, but if I'm preventing it from happening, then I'm not working on fixing it. But that's such a good point. If you're not prepared to work on fixing it every single time, or like you said, you walk in the door, you got your hands full of stuff, or you just maybe, I was always of the rule that don't talk to me for 30 minutes when I walk in the door, with human or otherwise. So I didn't want to deal with the dog when it came in the door. So it was easier to have the dog already away from the door. I can go do my thing, decompress, change my clothes, and now I can deal with the dog. And that's such a good point, because I think people, they flood, like you said, they flood them with this experience, but then they're not prepared to manage it. And then they wonder why it gets worse.
Right. Yeah. My opinion is a little bit different than some of maybe the average pet owners, because I'm coming from the background of both a trainer, a breeder, we show dogs. And so there's a bit more that mentality is a bit different than I think today's pet owner, if you will. But regardless, and I'm going to go back to your point in a second, it is very important that we remember, as much as we love them and they take on parts of our personality and they're our family and we want the best for them, they are still dogs and they need guidance, training, direction, and good management. Because left to their own accord, they may do things that we don't like. Even as adult dogs, they may do things that we don't like. And that's going to think, I really enjoy doing that. Who knew? And so now we got a behavior problem. So I would say for the life of your dog, just be proactive about managing it. And the other reason that management is important is because even if 80% of the time you leave your dog out and about and they're fine when you're away from the house, there may come a time where you need to manage your dog, right? You're getting all new windows or new doors, or you've got company coming over, or the dog had to have surgery and need to be confined for a period of time. If dogs aren't accustomed to being managed or even restricted in some way, and now all of a sudden they have to be, or there's a situation where you need to manage them because maybe there's a guest coming over who doesn't like or doesn't feel comfortable with dogs, then all of a sudden you're going to create stress and conflict, frustration, because you're changing up the routine. And that's also going to drive potential behavior problems, right? So it's really important to do that. But you're right. If the goal is, you have your management solutions, it's crate training, it's putting the dog in a space behind a baby gate, it's, those sort of things. But you also want to try to train a new response. And so what do you want the dog to do when you come into the home? Do you want them to go to their bed and stay? Do you want them to sit? I always think about the analogy I use with my clients sometimes is that if I were a hugger and every time I came to your house, I said, Jan, how are you? It's so good to see you. I'm so excited about our training lesson. Like, God, I hate when Brad hugs me. Like, I don't even know him that well. The next time I came to your house, she would go, "Hey, Brad, how are you?" And you would put your arm out to stop me from hugging you. You would train me to do something different. And
Have a hot frying
you think
pan in
about
your
that.
hand behind the kitchen island.
Something, right? Right. A vest that like stings me when I touch you. But what has to happen is the dog has to learn that new skill. So you walk in the door and you say, "Sophie, sit." And you don't look at her, talk to her, touch her, give her a treat, pet her until she sits. When dogs are excited, they're climbing that ladder, whether excited and jumping, excited and barking. It's really important that we can work to de-escalation, work to neutral before we move on to the next step. Okay. So we ask her to sit. She sits. We count to 10. You engage with her. I do think what you said earlier is really spot on. You walk in the door and you may say, "Hey, Sophie," real casually, but you keep your eyes forward. You put your mail down, put your computer down, pour a drink, go through whatever it is, but you're doing some other activity where your attention isn't on the dog until they relax. That might be 30 seconds. That might be 3 minutes, but they've got to get to neutral before you look at them, talk to them or touch them. You can't always do that, right? You can't always, you got a big dog and you got on a nice suit and they're going to rip it. Or your dog's big and they jump on you and it hurts. So that's not always a feasible strategy. Certainly with most dogs when they're younger, it is. Again, thinking about how social interaction drives behavior. And every time we come home, we're excited, they're excited, and it just promotes this over aroused greeting over time. So I do think your strategy is right. Just give them a second, let them settle down, but also we can train behaviors. And one of the things that we do all the time is we send them to their bed, or just as we walk in the door, we say, "Sit." Like even before they can think about jumping, they get like an arm's length away from us. We say, "Sit." And we don't look at you, talk to you, touch you, or engage with you until you sit and you take a breath. "Good girl. How was your day? Nice to see you." And as we talk to them, we use more of a soothing tone, like, "What a good girl you are. How was your day? I'm so glad I'm home. Let's go outside and go potty." Things like that.
As opposed to
"Hi,
that.
hi. Did you miss mommy?
Yeah.
Did you miss mommy?" Yeah. Yeah. Because tone is important, right? Tone is important. And if you already have a very enthusiastic dog, like a Labrador, right? The more excited you are, the more excited they get. And the more excited they get, then they're more likely to jump or mouth. And so don't underestimate the power of being neutral.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. I started thinking about something, with people who are listening to this and thinking, well, how can I walk in the door? My dog's so happy to see me. It's going to hurt their feelings. Like how much of the projecting,
Great point.
I would feel rejected if you walked in the door, Bradley, you didn't say hi to me. Do you see a lot of that?
I do think there's a change in dog ownership. What I'm going to call like old school dog owners. And I classify myself into this more pet parent. There are kind of pseudo child, which there's nothing wrong with it. That is not a criticism at all, but it is important to remember they are dogs and they do what works and they follow your lead. So if you come home and you're really excited, they're really excited. And I think what's more detrimental is creating a situation where for 3 months, 6 months, a year, you name it, you come home and every day, this is how we greet each other. And it gets worse and worse and worse or more intense. And then all of a sudden you say, "You can't do that anymore because I'm pregnant," or because my new partner doesn't like dogs who jump, right? And then you start scolding the dog. Every time you come in and they jump up, you're scolding them because you're frustrated or you're embarrassed. That I think is more detrimental to your dog and your relationship with your dog. That's going to create conflict and confusion and stress. More so than if you came in and you were just neutral for the first 3 minutes and waited until the excitement had worn off to engage with them. Your dog is not sitting around going, to your point, "Man, they must hate me today," right? They're just saying, "Okay, well, the longer I lay here, or as soon as I lay down at her feet, or as soon as I just stand here and look at her quietly, she's going to look at me." They're focused on what works versus the resentment or the jealousy or the emotion that we sometimes equate to. If I don't say hello to them, they're going to feel bad. I don't want to hurt their feelings.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's such a good point you made too. And you made it before and I forgot to hone in on it, but it reminded me again that I don't think too many people think about what they don't want the dog doing. I don't want them jumping on me when I come in the door. Okay, what do you want them to do instead? They haven't thought about that. That's such a good point. And it could be whatever you want. Is it sitting there? Is it going to your bed? Is it, whatever it might be? I think for all of the behaviors we want to eliminate, we need to start looking at what behavior is going to replace that.
Right.
Yeah.
Every great training plan should begin with a strong management strategy and focusing on what do we want the dog to do. And once you've done those two things really successfully, you probably don't need to worry about how do I stop the behavior, because you're going to have trained new behaviors. But, if the case arises where you're still having some problems, then you can progress your training plan. But you start with strong management and reinforcing heavily the behaviors that you want. And you said it earlier, it comes down to consistency. And I'm horrible at it. My clients don't get to see the young show dogs because they would be like, I'm paying you to do what? Because look at these hooligans, right? But my lifestyle is a little bit different with them. And if I ask them to stop, they can, and that's all fine. But you've got to decide what you want. You got to stick to it. It is like with anything, right? You want to quit smoking, you want to lose weight, you want to build stronger muscles. I mean, it's about being disciplined.
Yeah, that's so true. So true. So any final thoughts or advice for people who are kind of maybe in the throes of this process of, well, it never ends, right? I mean, you're going to be doing this for your dog's lifetime.
I think that's a great point. So you've got training as a process throughout life, especially for the first 2 years. When you see a dog that is at 4 or 5 years old, just the best dog, the quintessential dog, those dogs have had an owner that has chosen the right dog for them or their personality, right? Their lifestyle. They have committed to solid management. They are fulfilling their dog's needs on a daily basis, physical, emotional, mental, and their training, right? That first 2 years is really, really important in laying a foundation for adulthood. And we see that they do it for the first, maybe they're training for the first 6 months, and then things start to fall off. You've got to make an investment in training for the first 2 years. You've got to get your dog out and about in the world and practice these skills and incorporate these skills and have an expectation that your dog is going to behave and be polite before they get access to things that they want and enjoy. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we're only practicing skills at home with the leash in our hand or the food bowl in our hand or their nightly cookie, and so the dogs are good in those contexts, but take them out of that context and they don't have that training hasn't generalized because they're either too excited or the level is too difficult for their training experience. So it's got to be a commitment, especially for the first 2 years.
Yeah, that's such a good point. And if somebody finds themselves, wherever they are in the process, their dog, and the 2 year thing I think is so important because lo and behold, guess what, folks? As a rescue person, and for all my rescue friends, guess what? Most of the dogs that people called owner surrender, guess how old they are? They're right in that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because the groundwork has not been laid and now it's not fun to have the dog anymore. Even half the dogs that show up in shelters, yes, there might be some elderly dogs in shelters, don't get me wrong, but I think at least in Texas, it turns into that I didn't do what I was supposed to do by my dog. Now it's a big pain in the ass in the house. So we're just going to put it outside and then the lawn guy lets it out. It climbs the fence, it digs a hole, whatever it is, and it ends up in a shelter. And then I claim it wasn't my dog in the first place. I mean, it's like, so it's preventable, but you've got to start that process. But regardless, if they're in that process, wherever they are along the way, and they realize either I'm doing something wrong and I can't figure it out, or I'm not being consistent, what alternatives do we have? I mean, obviously we're going to do a whole episode together on selecting a trainer, but at what point do you say to yourself, this isn't working?
It's in terms of it's not working, so I need to rehome the dog, or I need help.
Well, I need help, or I need to do something different because I can't live like this. If
you find yourself, we know that living with a dog has a lot of great benefits, right? More than we can discuss, but it is a lot of work. It's a lot of responsibility to care for another being and fulfill their needs. If you get to the point where you are frustrated with your dog's behavior, you said, I've tried this, I've tried that, and you're frustrated. You find yourself not wanting to be around your dog. You find yourself yelling at your dog. You find yourself acting outside your norm. Like, I never envisioned this is what my life was going to be like with this dog. I had pie in the sky. Lassie was going to be here. My kids were going to fall into a well. He was going to go save them. Like, it was going to be the quintessential experience. Yeah. That's when I think you reach out for help, whether it's with a dog trainer, you're a veterinarian. There's a lot of resources available to pet owners or dog owners online and even in person. That would be my deciding factor. I don't like being around you. I'm frustrated and I'm acting outside of who I think I am as a dog owner. I'm not proud of myself as a dog owner.
Yeah. Or, the other thing that I see too is people who like, they're not living their perception of a normal life because of their dog. I can't do this because of my dog. Smart. I can't do that because of my dog. I think that's a huge thing. I don't, people
aren't coming over anymore.
Yeah, I can't have people over. Like I refuse to invite them, or I can't go on a vacation,
Yep.
or I can't have this dog leave this room because it gets into that with that animal or the dog or whatever it might be. I mean, that to me is a red flag. One of the reasons we just rebranded this show is I really wanted to focus on the human. You should have a life too, and a good life, and your
100%.
dog should be part of it, not taking over it.
Great. I
So.
couldn't agree with you more. And we see that all the time in the training world, where people are just exhausted. And sometimes it's simply because you're not stepping up as a dog owner, doing what you need to do. And sometimes it's as simple as you were given a dog that should have never been with you, and you were destined for trouble from the onset because you adopted a Ferrari and you were looking for a station wagon. It's just like, it was never going to work. You need a dog who is trusting, outgoing, and has resilience. And you got a dog who is untrusting, fearful, and doesn't want to be around strangers. So, so it's just, it kind of takes us full circle from the beginning. We were talking about matches and getting the right dog, but I think that's very important. I would advise anyone who is feeling frustrated with their dog to reach out for help. Even old dogs can learn new tricks. It may not be as quick as it would have been had we started this as a puppy or what have you, or if you had adopted the dog when it was younger, but training can make really great improvements. A commitment to training with a good trainer, an owner who's committed to training with a qualified trainer, they can make vast improvements in dog behavior. We see it every day. And so don't feel like you're alone. Don't stop having people over to your house. Start working with someone, ask for help and get help and figure out if this dog A is right for you. And B, how are we going to make this better? There may never be full resolution, but how can we make improvements so that way we're all a bit happier with each other?
That's good advice. So, Bradley, if somebody wanted to work with you, how would they go about getting in touch with you? Or if just wanted to learn more about what you're doing, because you're doing a lot of stuff with the training, the daycare, the showing, the breeding.
Yeah, so my personal website is bradleyphifer.com. So you can always reach me there if you want to talk to me directly. If anyone is in the need for a dog trainer or finding someone in their area that can help them, they can visit the CCPDT website, which is CCPDT, Certification Council for Professional Dog Trainers.org, ccpdt.org. And there's a trainer directory on there that will help them find someone in their area. And then we also have fetchtheanswer.com. Fetchtheanswer.com is a free resource that has online some like training resources and informational handouts just to get you started. There's also a trainer directory there for trainers that are CCPDT certified.
That's good to know. And we'll put all of those links on our show notes. So, Bradley, I really appreciate you sharing your knowledge and your experience with us today. I hope this gives hopes to dog owners that it's never too late to start taking action and start creating a life that works well for you and your dog, and that there's help out there. That's so awesome.
Yeah, very much. Thank you for having me. This was a great conversation.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody for listening to another episode of the Pet Parent Hotline. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Pet Parent Hotline. If you enjoyed the show, don't keep it to yourself. Text a friend right now with a link and tell them I've got a show that you need to hear, and ask them to let you know what they think. And remember, your pet's best life starts with you living yours. So be sure to take good care of yourself this week and your pets.